Welcome to Soul Stories, where every tale touches the heart, inspires the mind, and stays with the soul. Asterisk Ethan Ward, a self-made millionaire whose name regularly appeared in business magazines, rarely went anywhere without the silent shadow of security guards trailing behind him. Every step of his life was scheduled, protected, polished. But that morning, something in him cracked quietly, invisibly, like a thin line in glass that only spreads with time. He dismissed his security detail with a terse nod and decided to walk through the city park alone. Asterisk, he told himself he just needed air, a little space to think. But deep down, he knew he was running from endless board meetings. From the soulless marble halls of his penthouse, from the strange hollowness that success had carved into him. Asterisk Park greeted him with sounds he hadn't heard in years. Laughing, dogs barking, the rhythmic creak of swings moving back and forth. He had almost forgotten what an ordinary morning felt like. Asterisk says Ethan walked along the gravel path, hands tucked in the pockets of his tailored coat. He found himself slowing near the playground. A group of children chased each other around the slide, their joy so loud and unrestrained that it tugged unexpectedly at something in his chest. Asterisk, he almost smiled. Almost then, a sharp scream cut through the air. Asterisk, Daddy, that's my brother. Asterisk. The voice was small, high-pitched, and trembling with excitement. Ethan's head jerked toward the sound. The little girl stood frozen near the swings, her tiny finger pointed straight at him, eyes wide with shock as if she'd just seen a ghost. Asterisk. For a second, Ethan wondered if she meant someone behind him. He turned no and he faced her again, confusion stitching his brows together. I'm sorry, he managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Asterisk, but the girl didn't move. She stared at him with an intensity far too deep for a child of her age. Her curly hair bounced as she took a hesitant step toward him, her gaze scanning his face with innocent recognition as though she was trying to match him to a memory. She wasn't old enough to understand. Asterisk, the mother woman in her early 30s rushed forward, clearly mortified. Sweetheart, don't shout like that, she scolded gently, pulling the girl close. Then she turned to Ethan. I'm so sorry, sir. She must be confused, Asterisk, but when her eyes met his, her voice stopped. The color drained from her face. Ethan felt his heart stutter. A strange sense of familiarity washed over him, tugging at buried recollections he had long forced himself to forget. The world seemed to slow. The laughter, the barking dogs, the wind, everything faded into a distant hum. Asterisk. Ethan Ward stood perfectly still, staring at the woman and child who looked at him as if they knew him. Asterisk, as if they had always known him. The woman reached the girl in a few quick steps, her breath uneven as she knelt to gather her child. I'm so sorry, she said automatically, smoothing the little girl's hair in an attempt to calm her. She didn't mean to shout, just her voice faltered, her hands froze. So lay almost fearfully, she lifted her gaze to Ethan's face, and the moment her eyes met his, the color drained from her cheeks as if someone had pulled a curtain of shock over her entire body. Mara. Ethan's voice cracked open a decade of silence. It was her, Mara Hayes, the woman he had loved recklessly, helplessly, foolishly, or in the same breath. The woman who used to laugh at his dreams yet believed in him more than he believed in himself. The woman whose disappearance had broken him in ways he had never spoken aloud. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. The past stood between them like a ghost neither of them had expected to see in daylight. Mama, the little girl whispered, tugging Mara's sleeve. Why are you scared? I'm not, Mara whispered, but her voice trembled. The girl peeked around her mother's arm and stared wide-eyed at Ethan, her small fingers clutching tighter into the fabric of Mara's coat. She shifted closer to her mother, her voice barely audible as she whispered, Mama, he looks like the picture. Ethan inhaled sharply. Picture. His mind raced through years. He had tried to bury old photographs, lost memories, dreams of a family he once imagined building with the woman standing in front of him. Mara cast a quick, panicked look at her daughter, as though wishing she could pull those words back into the child's mouth. Ethan took a step closer, unable to help himself. Mara, what is she talking about? His voice was low but filled with something raw, fear, hope, confusion tightly braided together. Mara swallowed hard. Ethan, please, not here, not like this. Then where? He asked, his tone soft but urgent. I spent years wondering why you disappeared, why you never said goodbye. And now his eyes flicked to the little girl who stared at him with uncanny familiarity. Now you show up with a child who says I look like a picture. The girl tugged Mara's sleeve again. Mama, is he, sweetheart? Not now, Mara whispered quickly, but her reaction only deepened Ethan's certainty. His heart pounded, so loudly he could hear it in his ears. A truth hovered just out of reach he had never imagined, yet one that suddenly made terrifying, perfect sense. Mara, Ethan said quietly, is she, my? Mara's eyes glossed with tears. She tried desperately to blink away. And in that moment, Ethan understood he wasn't looking at a stranger's child, he was looking at a missing chapter of his own life. Asterisk, the three of them moved to a quiet bench near the pond. away from the noise of the playground. Ducks glided across the water. Children laughed in the distance, but around Ethan and Mara, a heavy silence wrapped itself tightly, choking the air. Mara sat with her daughter on her lap, her hands clasped so tightly together that her knuckles turned white. Ethan sat beside them, elbows on his knees, staring at the ground because looking at her felt like reopening a wound he had never allowed to heal. Finally, with a trembling breath, Mara spoke. I'm sorry, she said, barely louder than a whisper. I knew seeing me would hurt you. That's why I avoided this. That's why I ran. Ethan lifted his head, eyes sharp with questions that had been buried for 10 long years. Why, Mara? Why did you disappear without a word? I thought something had happened to you. Something did. She exhaled shakily. I found out I was pregnant. The words hit him like cold water. He blinked. Pregnant? Mara nodded, eyes fixed on her hands. You had just started building your company. You were working day and night, barely sleeping, barely eating. Every time you talked about the future, it was meetings, deals, investors. I didn't want to derail your entire life, or make you feel trapped. Ethan's voice cracked. So, you left me, because you thought I wouldn't want a child. No, she said quickly. I left because I didn't want to become an obligation you resented. You were destined for something big, Ethan. I could see it even back then. I didn't want to be the reason you didn't reach it. He shook his head, disbelief twisting in his chest. You took that choice away from me. Mara's eyes filled with tears. I know, and I'm sorry. At first I thought I would tell you later, when things settled. But then later turned into years, and every year it became harder. Ethan swallowed tightly, and the little girl. Mara brushed a curl from her daughter's face. Her name is Lily, she's 6. Ethan stared at the child who had unknowingly shattered his world minutes earlier. His voice trembled. I have a daughter. Mara hesitated just for a breath. Then she added softly, and a son. Ethan's heart lurched. A son. She nodded. Lee, and he's 11, he's at school right now. The world tilted. I have a son. Ethan whispered, the words catching in his throat. 2 children. 2. The realization didn't just hit him, it broke him open. 10 years of loneliness, ambition, and buried longing crashed over him in a single tidal wave. Tears spilled down his cheeks, uncontrolled, unrestrained. He didn't wipe them away. Because for the first time in years, Ethan Ward wasn't the untouchable millionaire. He was just a man who had missed a decade of his children's lives. And it shattered him. For a long moment, Ethan sat frozen, shoulders trembling as he tried to steady his breath. He felt the weight of 10 lost years pressing down on him, years he would never be able to reclaim. Regret, fear, long in every emotion he had buried. Under success clawed its way to the surface. Mara watched him quietly, her own eyes shining with unshed tears. Despite everything's mistakes, the silence, the heartbreaker, she reached out and placed her hand gently on his shoulder. Her touch was soft, hesitant, as if she feared he might pull away. If you want to know them, she said, voice barely above a whisper. We can try. Ethan looked up, his eyes red, but something new flickered in them. Hope. Warm, fragile, but unmistakably there. I want more than that, he said, his voice thick. I want to know them. I want to be in their lives. He took a deep, shaky breath. I want to try with you too if we can. Mara's lips parted slightly, surprise and uncertainty flashing through her expression. This wasn't the ambitious, unstoppable Ethan she remembered. This was a man stripped of pretense, asking not as a millionaire, but as a father, desperate for the chance life kept from him. She nodded slowly. We'll take it one step at a time. Lily shifted in Mara's lap, eyeing Ethan curiously now that the tension had eased. She reached out a tiny hand, brushing Ethan's fingertips as if testing the reality of him. He smiled, small but genuine. Hi, Lily. She giggled softly and hid her face in her mother's shoulder. And the simple, innocent gesture hit Ethan harder than any business victory ever had. He stood, wiping his tears. Take me to them, he said quietly but firmly. To Liam, to wherever we need to go. Mara hesitated only a moment before standing to. He gets out of school in an hour. We can walk there. She paused, her gaze softening as she added. He looks a lot like you. A sharp breath escaped Ethan, half a laugh, half a sob. They began walking together along the path that curved out of the park. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting long shadows ahead of them. For years, Ethan had walked alone, believing that loneliness was the price of ambition. But not today. Today there was a child skipping ahead of them. A woman who once loved him walking beside him, and a future messy, uncertain, but real stretching out before him. He didn't know what would happen next. He didn't know if forgiveness would come easily or if rebuilding the past was even possible. But for the first time in a decade, Ethan felt alive. Asterisk, as they stepped out of the park and onto the bustling street, he reached for Mara's hand tightly, just enough for her to know he was there. Ready? Asterisk. Together, they walked toward the family he never knew he'd lost. Asterisk in the life he never realized he desperately needed.